Okay, hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Megan Leatherman, and I'm here with my co-host Megan Miller. Megan, say hi.
Hello. Yeah.
um, for those of you who aren't familiar with our work, I wanted to just do a really quick introduction. I founded a company called A Wild New Work, which is a career development agency in Portland. And together with Megan, we've started what's called A Wild New School, which is essentially the sort of educational arm of A Wild New Work, which is all about helping working people learn how to work in rhythm with nature and in alignment with what the natural world is doing. And that includes information about the seasons, like we're going to talk about today, the themes of each season, how to really get to know your own internal rhythm and work with that in a good, healthy way, and how to align your professional goals and actions with what your body naturally wants to do throughout the year. And instead of sort of pushing and forcing something that's not really seasonally aligned, really getting a better return on the efforts that you're putting in, and doing work that makes sense with what's happening around you. So summer is such a special time, and I'm excited to talk to you about it today. I think the beauty of working seasonally is in part that it reminds us of our own kind of inner wisdom. And what you see on the screen is what's called a wheel of the year. And this is just a snapshot of the seasons and the months, as well as some of the ancient Celtic holidays that mark each season, some of which we still observe today. So midsummer is the summer solstice, which is coming up on June 21st. That's the official beginning of summer. And then Lammas is an early harvest holiday on August 1st, which just sort of celebrates the summer. So I love that it's a wheel, because it, I think, highlights the fact that none of this is linear. It doesn't stop and end at any point. And just like our career development, this is a constant evolution. And every summer we get new opportunities to expand, especially in the summer. So we'll talk about what's going to come up for each of the seasons. But I will just say, in summer, the big themes are that we're talking about growth. So the plants are growing, the berries are ripening, there's fruit on the trees. We get to harvest and enjoy all of that. And I would encourage each of you to consider how you want to grow this season, whether that's, financially, whether you want to take on more responsibilities and growth at work, taking on a new career path, a new role, or just feeling better in your current role. So as we talk, I encourage you to think about how you most want to expand in this season. This is really the best, most beautiful time of year to do that. One other thing before we dive into each of the tips that we want to share. A lot of this might feel sort of metaphorical, and some of it is. We get to just imagine what the summer teaches us and take it into our own experience. But we mean it quite literally as well. And I encourage you to look at the timelines or the timeframes that we give you and put this on your calendar, for the month of June, between the solstice and Leo season, which is July 22nd, put on your calendar ways to release what's not working for you, to take better care of yourself. Really make this structured in whatever way works for you, so that you can really kind of put it into work in your life. So with that, I'm going to dive into tip number 1, and then I'll hand it over to Megan. It's not going to be me talking the entire time, I promise. So tip number 1 that we want to share is to notice what you've outgrown in your work life. And the time frame that we're talking about here is June 21st, which is, again, the official start of summer, which is the solstice, until July 22nd, which is when the sun moves into the sign of Leo. But for our purposes, in this time frame, the sun will be in the sign of Cancer. And we use the zodiac signs because, even if you don't really know about astrology or believe in astrology, the signs really give us I think, a better understanding of what the natural world is doing that time of year. So when the sun is in Cancer, which is a water sign, it's really a period of hydrating before the heat really kicks in late August and early September. So how can you really, really hydrate, really set yourself up for wellness throughout the rest of the summer? The major theme of this period for you, I think personally and professionally, is to let go of what no longer supports you. So how can you create more spaciousness in your life and career? Um, this time of year, the rivers will swell with water from the snow melt off the mountain. The garden beds are big. We need a lot of room in the garden for things to grow. How can you kind of create more spaciousness in your life and release the things that either don't energize you anymore in your career or really never did? Um, um, sorry. And one of the signs of Cancer that's symbolized by the crab, and I think it's a really beautiful metaphor because crabs go through an incredible molting process, which we talk a lot about in our course, the summer course that launches on the 20th. And I want to just share a little bit about that so that you can kind of understand the energy of this time. So when crabs are ready to expand out of their current shell, they start to, get tight. They know that their body is no longer able to fit inside of this shell. So when it's time to molt or release that shell, they pump themselves with salt water. They get so big and so swollen that the back seam on the back of their shell cracks open, and they pull their entire soft body out of the crab, often leaving their stomach lining and some of their digestive functions there. But they come out of the crab the shell completely. And then they are just sort of there, kind of vulnerable in their soft body, sort of floating around for up to a month at a time until their new shell, which is bigger and able to give them the room that they need, comes back and sort of solidifies upon them. So in this time frame, in this window when the sun is in Cancer, we're really thinking about what kind of shell do I need right now? Is my shell, is my career, is the way that I relate to my job, is my morning routine, are my work relationships, are all of these things really supporting my growth? Are they big enough that I can expand and sort of be as big as I want to be this time of year? And I think it's important to note that we don't always have to know what will replace that old shell. The crab doesn't know what their new shell will look like, how big it will be. They just know that this one is not supporting them anymore. And we don't have to know exactly what's going to replace our shells either. Our work is really to just let go of the things we know feel really hard, the things we know really drain us, the things that we've tried to make work that just aren't working anymore, and then kind of hang out in the vulnerability that comes after that, which Megan will talk about. And sometimes there has to be an awareness of this before we even do anything with it. So you don't have to, quit your job or leave a relationship or take any big action. You'll know when it's time to do that. This can be as easy and soft as just a statement or awareness. If you know that you really want to grow financially this summer, that you're ready to make more money through your career, this can begin as just a really clear statement that says, my current salary is no longer working for me. It can be that easy. And then with that openness, that kind of admission, the energy will come so that you'll know what to do with that. But sometimes it has to start with just a really clear, honest assessment of where you're at. This relationship is no longer working for me. This office space feels yucky. It can just be sort of that initial kind of awareness so that things can start to flow from there. So yeah, that's what I'd like to say about that one. Let's move on to tip number 2. Okay, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Megan Miller. So I'm going to talk about tip number 2, which is amplify your self-care. And we're talking about the same general time frame. We're under the sign of Cancer. And this is a time to really, we're going to emphasize support, self-care, and spaciousness, creating more spaciousness in your life and your work. So Megan Leatherman just talked about the crab, and she has such a lovely, I just love this part of summer. It's such a beautiful metaphor for what might be happening in your life and your work. This idea that you're outgrowing something and that it's really beautiful, but it can be really hard. And so we talk about vulnerability and the idea that when you're outgrowing something, you might experience more vulnerability and more sensitivity during that time. So we talk about the process of the crab outgrowing its shell, this being a time of vulnerability before it can move into its new, bigger shell. And when you're outgrowing something in your life, in your career, like I said, you might be experiencing more vulnerability and sensitivity. This might be a time that you're really needing extra support in your life and your career. And so we ask the question, who and what do you need in the way of support and encouragement for your growth? So I'll say that again. Who and what do you need in the way of support and encouragement for your growth? So if we get more specific about that, what people and environments are supportive of your growth? Are there people and environments that don't feel particularly supportive of your growth? And that doesn't mean that they're bad or they're wrong, but I think it's really important to pay attention to how you feel when you're talking about big changes you want to make, when you're talking about your big desires for your life and your career, and how you feel about how people respond to that and the input that you get from others. You might find that you're more sensitive to certain types of feedback. Or that certain people or environments don't feel like places where you can be really vulnerable about expressing your biggest desires. So what are some ways that you can amplify support? You know, Megan and I talk a lot about listening to the body, and I think this is a really good example of that, of really paying attention to how do I feel when I'm talking about what I want, when I'm talking about a change that I make. Where do I feel more comfortable to be able to express that, and where do I feel maybe kind of sensitive, or I experience more self-doubt, or I'm kind of sensitive to the feedback that I'm getting from the people around me, and really listening to that and finding the places where you feel most supported. And so when we talk about amplifying support, it can be helpful even just to make a list. Who are the people who I feel are really supportive of my growth at this time? What are the environments? What are the communities that are supportive of that? But outside of that, you can think about, like, how do I feel when I'm on social media? Who do I follow? Who do I engage with that feels really supportive of me? Are there books or there podcasts that feel really supportive and encouraging of my growth? So the second part, I'm going to do a two-part for this tip number 2, is more specifically about self-care and spaciousness. In summer, the environmental themes that we talk about that the days are longer, there's increased sunlight, high energy, growth and abundance. All of these things are really wonderful. But the shadow side of summer is the risk of going too far. And we talk about things like heat exhaustion, fires in the Pacific Northwest. We've seen a lot of fires the last couple summers. Death of new growth, a lack of balance when the heat outweighs the water. And so in our careers, we can think about that. The risk of going too far is burnout, exhaustion, overdoing it, not having enough self-care, not finding enough balance in our lives. And in order to find that balance, we need to really think about what are some ways to slow down, take care of ourselves, create spaciousness, and amplify our self-care. And so some of the activities that we recommend during this time are to really pay attention to when you're feeling a little bit burnt out, when you feel like you're starting to overdo it, or that like high energy of summer is maybe going too far. And some suggestions that we make are noticing when it might be time to take a day off work, giving yourself extra time in the morning, adding in a brief meditation during your day, spending some time in water if you literally are feeling overheated or too hot, if you're noticing the heat of summer, canceling an activity that feels like too much, or taking a nap. And so those are just some of the self-care tips that we recommend if you notice that you feel overextended, or that you're going too far, that you're feeling that sense of burnout. So I'll hand it back to Megan for the next tip number 3.
Yeah, thank you. And I love working with the wheel of the year and the seasons because all of this builds upon each other. So if we've done the work of letting go what's not helping us, that opens up a ton of energy. And then if we sit with the vulnerability and the fear that comes after that, and take good care of ourselves in the midst of that, then we have the energy and the wisdom to move into the next season, which is when the sun moves into Leo, late July into late August. And this is when we can really amplify our strengths and self-expression in the workplace. Leo is a fire sign. It's about play and having fun and strength and loyalty and this sort of regal attitude that we can take to our work. It's sort of like if we are the best, most vibrant version of ourselves in our lives and our work, that's what we get to kind of play with this season. The major theme here is doing work that feels fun, that feels good, really like you did in Cancer season, letting go of what just feels yucky and then stepping into what feels like fun and it's sort of light and it's interesting to you. Sort of ironically, I think that is harder for a lot of people. We're sort of taught in this culture, especially in the workforce, to focus on our weaknesses. How can we compensate for our lack of skills? What do we need to do, or, where can we improve? But really the best use of your energy throughout the year, but especially this summer, will be doing more of the work that feels good to you, because generally what feels like fun, what feels interesting is a sign that you're on track with one of your strengths. So if you don't know a lot about strengths, what I mean there is just the things that you do, your sort of natural talents, the things that you were born with. I'm not talking about skills or work experience or knowledge. Those things sort of can come up on top of strengths, but strengths are really the bedrock of your giftedness and what you do professionally and personally that you're just naturally sort of good at. It's a strength when it comes fairly easily to you, when if you put some attention into it, you sort of get exponentially better. It feels nice to do. It may not be something that you want to do 24 hours a day, but generally you don't sort of have the energy drain that comes with doing work that is not in alignment with our strengths. So some examples could be being really present with a colleague. Presence could be one of your strengths. Disseminating information, so kind of distilling a bunch of information down and communicating out in a way that is helpful to people could be a strength. Networking or bringing people together could be a strength. And generally, we have a good sense of what our strengths are. The work is actually in honoring them and flexing them instead of focusing so much on our weaknesses. So in this time frame, I would encourage you to, again, put time on your calendar, schedule things, block out the space that you need to transition into this kind of energy. Take a strengths assessment, talk to your colleagues or your loved ones about what they see your giftedness as being. Notice what feels good to do and do more of that. It really is a question of just putting action into what already feels like it's flowing. And hopefully, if you've done the good work in the season in Cancer prior, you'll have the energy to do that and it will come really naturally and it should feel fun. I encourage you to schedule something fun and work related in this window. Those don't have to be disconnected. If you really don't like your work right now, how can you do it in a way that feels more fun to you? Do you hate running meetings? Do you want to crack a joke at the start to kind of loosen things up? Do you want to play music that you love while you're doing a mundane task? Like, how can you really imbue your work with more fun this time of year? And again, not overdoing it, but really letting yourself be playful here and honor the giftedness that you already have and stop pushing against the tide and really let it flow out of you. It's such powerful medicine for us personally and professionally. I think that's all I wanted to share about that one. So Megan, I'll hand it back to you for tip number 4.
Okay. All right, so tip number 4 is stretch into authenticity. And again, we're still in Leo season and we're talking about expressing yourself more fully in your career. So I'm going to start with a quote that I really love. It's, I think, a really beautiful definition of authenticity. And this is from Maya Angelou, and she says, authenticity is simply telling the truth to yourself and others. Authenticity is simply telling the truth to yourself and others. And so I think this is a really lovely way to think about authenticity. I hear this word and it feels so big and overwhelming, and I think it's easy to get lost in, like, who am I? What is my purpose? You know, who's my authentic self? And kind of these big questions that feel really overwhelming. And again, Megan and I, like I said, we talk a lot about listening to the body. And I think this is one where going small is really helpful, of just answering this question every day over and over and over again about what is my truth? What is true for me? And using that as the building blocks to feeling like you're really fully expressing your authentic self. So I want to talk about an inward focus versus an outward focus. In practicing truth telling, telling the truth about yourself, when it comes to questions about who you are, what's true for you, what do I like? What do I dislike? How do I feel when I'm at work? What do I most need right now? What inspires me in my life? What are my values? What are my strengths, and how can I express them? So just continuing to come back to this question of what is true for me. And that those are different questions than when we take an outward focus. And an outward focus is, what is expected of me? What will others think? How are my coworkers approaching tasks? How is this supposed to be done? And we all do this. You know, it's really easy to look outside of us and to compare and see, you know, how are other people approaching this? Like, what do I think is the right answer? What is expected of me? And to get really stuck there. And so with authenticity, we talk about and we encourage to keep coming back to listening to yourself. What is true for me? And to get more specific, in career, we're talking about things like, what kind of clients do you most like working with? What kind of tasks and projects do you really enjoy? And which are the ones that you don't particularly like? And it might be starting small with truth telling around that, about asking to be on a project that's really exciting to you. Or it might be saying no to a client that doesn't feel aligned for you, where you feel like, I can't fully serve this person and it doesn't feel fully aligned for me. And so I'm going to say no to this. It might be looking at, what do you need in a work environment to feel fully supported, and how do you ask for that? So it might be asking for your needs to be met in a work environment. It might be looking at where you feel inspired in your life or career and trying to engage with that more. Like, what do I actually enjoy doing? What feels really exciting and inspiring to me? And how do I start doing more of that in my life and my career? And so some of the possible activities that we recommend during this time frame to really express your authenticity are shifting your focus to work that's more in alignment with your strengths as much as possible, wearing something to work that feels like a true reflection of you. And so it may seem like a small thing, but thinking about your appearance, how you dress, how you express yourself externally, and doing that in a way that feels really good and comfortable and in alignment for you. It might be doing something new at work that makes you feel really good about yourself. Doing something playful, like Megan was talking about, doing something playful at work or outside of work, expressing your sense of humor at work. So these are just some suggestions we have for ways that you can start building on that and expressing your authenticity at work. So I will hand it back to Megan for tip number 5.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah.
So then we move into Virgo season. So on August 23rd, the sun shifts into the sign of Virgo, which is an earth sign. And we're invited to put structure around the work that we've done in Leo season. So if you think about Cancer as sort of this release and this spaciousness, and then it flows into Leo, which is all about inviting more of ourselves out into the world, expressing ourselves, doing the work that feels good. Then in Virgo season in late summer, we're invited to put some structure around that so that flow can continue to serve us throughout the rest of the year, the rest of the seasons. In Virgo, we're talking about the late harvest, so the fruits and vegetables that are coming to the end of the season. We're still harvesting those, looking forward to, shifting into darker days into the fall, which starts on September 23rd. We're really discerning what worked this summer and what didn't work. So Virgo is a transition sign. It gets us into the fall. So we get to look at, what did I release this summer? What did I try that really worked, that felt good to me? What do I want to harvest? Where do I want to put my attention so that I can kind of take the last bits of abundance that I can throughout the rest of this growing season? So Virgo is really an invitation to look at what is going well and to put your attention on the things that are proving to be fruitful, that are ripe, that are ready to harvest, that want to grow even more, and really shifting the focus away from where I think many of us put it in our careers, away from what's not working, what I don't like, where I feel stuck, where I'm limited, where I have no choice, but really choosing to look at the things that are going well, that are growing, that are here in your garden ready to be cultivated. And being discerning about where you put your energy and where you put your focus so that you are spending time on the things that really serve you for the long haul. One of the things that I love to remember about Virgo season, so it's symbolized by the Virgin, right? That's where the word comes from. And in our culture, that's been sort of co-opted to just mean someone who has not had sex. But the original meaning was actually a person or a woman who was whole in and of herself. It just meant someone who was fully integrated, fully complete, just by themselves. And when I think about that in terms of career, I think about the tendency for us to assume that there's always an expert that knows better. There's always a hiring manager that's ready to critique us and tell us where we don't fit into a role. And Virgo season is so beautiful because if we've done the work of Leo and we've really tapped into our strengths, we've had fun, we remember our own power and our own giftedness, then we're much more capable of being the expert on our own life, on our own career. And in Virgo season, we then get to decide from a place of groundedness and power what works and what doesn't work for us, what kind of structures we want to put around our career that serve us, whether that's a new way of working, a new role, a new career path, a new collaboration, whatever it is. In the late summer, we get to do the actual work to make this real. And again, not overdoing it, balancing that heat and water that we have to balance in the summer, but really working hard. And that doesn't mean the typical way of working that leads to burnout, but really doing the deep work and discerning, and telling ourselves, like, even though I've done this for years, or even though this was the way I was doing this, last summer, this no longer fits for me. And here's what is going to work. And here's where I want to put my focus. And that's hard adult level work to do. So Virgo is no joke, but it can be a really beautiful period of manifesting and making real all of the fun and flow and playfulness that we've cultivated in Cancer and Leo. So it's a really beautiful time of harvest and enjoyment. Megan, anything else you want to share about the tips that we've talked about before we transition to closing?
No, I don't think so. I think we could go on and on. There's a lot to say about all of these tips, and 35 minutes goes really fast, so it feels like a really brief overview, but we wanted to share a little bit about our program that's now open for enrollment. And I would say, and you can add to this, Megan, that a lot of what we want to do is create community with people around these ideas. And we are offering a summer session, a 10-week summer session, but I think we're also thinking about other ways to support people and to create community around these ideas. And so we're so happy to see that people joined us today and signed up for the webinar, that people are excited about these ideas. And we want to really think about other ways of creating community and continuing these conversations. So our 10-week course summer, titled Expand, because we're talking about growth, we're talking about expansion, is starting on the solstice this year, and it's already open for enrollment. So we'll tell you a couple places. We are going to send a follow-up email, but you can check us out. Our individual information and information about the program at awildnewwork.com or meganelizabethmiller.com. You can listen to A Wild New Work podcast, which is Megan Leatherman's podcast. There's a lot of really lovely information there about what we're doing and about growing in your career. And we're both also on Instagram at A Wild New Work and at inspiredlife_NW for Northwest, at inspiredlife_Northwest. And I wanted to let you all know that we have a special offer for our webinar guests that we are offering for anybody who's interested in our course and signs up by midnight on Friday, tomorrow. So that's like a day and a half. We are going to be throwing in, I'm offering a free 60-minute coaching session for anyone who signs up before the end of the day tomorrow. And that is in addition to the 30-minute coaching session that's already included. And I'm going to leave it open-ended, for anybody who signs up in the next before the end of the day tomorrow, that's something that is available to you at any point during the 10-week course. We'll share more information about that in a follow-up email, but that's a special gift that we're offering to you for joining our webinar and for anyone who signs up by midnight tomorrow. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Megan, about enrollment, the course, where to contact us?
I would just say that it's going to be a really beautiful exploration of what is already happening around you and what you already know. I mean, the seasons are for everyone. This is just a process of remembering, and it's only been since the Industrial Revolution that we've forgotten that. So this is in your bones. It's really a beautiful chance to kind of unfold into what is easy and more graceful in your career. And we're just really excited to support folks in this way. So I hope you join us if this resonates with you. Yeah, that sounds great. I can review really quickly what's included with the course, and then we can wrap up for today, if that sounds good. Sure.
So included with the course, there is a 30-minute coaching session included, weekly lessons on the wisdom of summer, written exercises to gain clarity on what you're desiring in your career. We'll be sending weekly mindfulness recordings. There's a community discussion board, so you can engage with other participants about what you're learning, about how you're growing. There's an option to have an accountability partner if you choose, as a way of staying on track with your personal goals. There's a few different Q&A sessions with us where you can ask questions and we'll send you recorded responses so that you feel like there's some personalized attention and you get to ask the specific questions you have about where you're at with your career. And then Megan Leatherman is offering some optional nature walks in the Portland area, which I think is a really beautiful addition for anybody who's in the Northwest or lives close to Portland to be able to meet up in person and spend time in nature together. So all of that's included. And like I said, if you sign up by the end of the day tomorrow, then you will also get an additional 60-minute coaching session included. And you can use that anytime during the 10 weeks just as additional support to keep you moving forward on your own personal career goals. So we hope to see you there. We're happy that you made it to the webinar. And I think that's it for me. Do you have any last thoughts to add, Megan?
No, I would just say that whether you join us for the course or not, I hope the summer is expansive and big and balanced for each of you, and just want to thank you again for your time, whether you're here with us live or listening in later. So with that, I think we'll sign off. Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.